How's it going, guys? Let's talk about the market. All right. So, if you guys have been following me on Twitter, there is one tweet that um, I truly resonate with, and I 100% agree. This isn't one that I put out, but this is one that was said by Don Alt. I'm gonna share it with you guys here, but so I made my background white just for this video. I usually have a darker background. Who cares? The thing that I enjoy is when people are annoyed by things that I do. So white backgrounds, me shitting on Trump 24/7. Anyways, um, pretty sure crypto is currently pricing in the fall of Donald Trump. Stupid reason to nuke, but given the market is weak, it takes any excuse it's given the entire crypto sector foolishly sucked his dick and went all in on him for a brief temporary gains while he milked the space with his infinite meme coin NFTs and other ways to extract were along for the ride of his personal demise. Also, he talks about how his tariffs were stupid, and once they unravel, it's going to be bullish. And this imploding would be a nuke to buy. Now, 100% agree with them. For my day one supporters, you know how much I hate this man. For all the people that said he was going to be bullish for the markets, he wasn't. Um, you know, he will be the reason why we will be in a recession, in my opinion. And like I said before, when we have the pivots from the Fed and we do cut rates, that is when a recession normally starts. You can go back and take a look at 2008. You can take a look at 2007, 2008, and sorry, I said that before, 2008 and 2000. Um, Whenever we have rate cuts, while it may be short-term bullish, over the long run, it's usually bearish. Um, and like I said, I believe the top is in for the cycle. I've been pretty vocal about this. I called the local top of January when he became president. Literally the day he became president, we went from literally the top of the market, 100 plus K, down to 75K. And although I have been in, or I am in spot positions trying to catch that leg up, that lower high leg up, there has been virtually no buying pressure. Now let's take a look at Bitcoin before I go into anything else. But with the Epstein files most likely going to be released, before that labia-looking person, Pam Bondi. Um, I hate all of them, but basically, if she hasn't scrubbed out this fucker's name, then I'd be surprised that he comes out 100% clean. But Democrats, Republicans, anyone involved in that list needs to get the fuck out, and that list most likely will cause some type of dip because you will have big, prominent, and notable figures on there, whether Republican, Democrat, um, tree hugger, whatever. It's going to cause some type of cascade and ripple in the market. So if that happens, I think that is a dip to buy. Now, like I said, I think the top is in, but looking at Bitcoin, when I first made this video about a month and a half ago, I told you guys that once this level was lost, this blue level, that was your trigger to basically start shorting. Okay, that was the last higher low, and we closed below it last week. And from that point on, we dumped around 11%. Okay, now from the highs till now, we've dumped almost 30%. We can take a look at the last previous times, okay, that we've dumped around this much. Are the local lows in? I'm not sure, but all I know is I am playing any local bounce into another lower high, and I'm going to sell it. There is a strong demand here. Now, this is a weekly chart. I expect this area to hold. Okay. And we can draw a trend line, and you can clearly see that even that trend line was lost. So my bottom, my local bottom was 93K, and we touched that literally to the penny, if not just a little pubic hair lower. All right. That's where my final DCA is. I am in from a little bit higher with all my averages, rounding out to around 96K. But I'm looking to sell this push up into supply. Okay. So I'm not going to update everyone on Twitter when I plan to sell. That is for you to decide. But if we get a push, whether it's around 107 to 110K, might be lower, but everyone is looking at this SR point as a place to short. Rightfully so, that should be an area to short. Okay. And I think that the next level will be this demand zone here. Now, again, trend has been lost. You can talk about this being, from the weekly, the next higher low here, but I honestly think going up to there, that is a short trigger, and then we slowly come back down. And over the course of the next year, I think that the trajectory of the markets is going to be literally something like this. Okay. That's like I said, after December, I won't be here to update the markets. I don't care what the markets does after Christmas, but I've made this before. You can go back and watch the video, but if you take a look from the lows, okay, to the highs, okay, let's do this. 786. We got a bounce there at the golden pocket. 786 gave the bounce. Now, let's do that shit again. Let's draw it from the lows to the highs. Assuming that this is the top of the cycle, this green zone all the way down to 40K is where you want to buy. All right, if we're playing fractals. Now, I won't go into this. Maybe I'll make a video that goes over the macro thesis again, and that'll be the final video that I put out for a long-term analysis on Bitcoin. But all I care about currently is where this local high is going to be, where this lower high will be. All right. Now you can draw a trend line, and by the way, for those that don't believe that everything is in the charts, like that one guy who names himself after a ranch or whatever the fuck his name is, the trend is not broken. There is no bullish trend until we get back above here. That was the last previous. Let's make this. Okay. 106. That, if we close above, that is when you have a market structure break on the daily that will be bullish. All right. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be bullish on the weekly. This is just a daily indicator. There's a whole bunch of supply there. So we can close above, come back down, make a higher low somewhere here, again, reject, and still go down something like that. All right. This is just a daily market structure break, and that blue line around 106K is where that structure break happens to the upside. Okay. Now, for a move to happen at this current price, and by the way, the reason why I set the 93K level is strong support and you have a daily demand zone. You need Bitcoin to consolidate here and put in some type of round base and then eventually run. This shouldn't take, a single day or 2 days. Like if you get a huge spike up, just like we did here, right? How we had some few days of consolidation and then spike up, come back down. If we reject from this supply zone, then in my opinion, we go straight into this demand zone here. Okay. You need a few days of buildup. You need the buyers to step in. Now it's going to be some type of range forming. And again, you don't want that to happen in a few days. You want the short sellers to get exhausted. And you need the buyers to step in here for a longer type of consolidation. And by that, I'm talking about something like this. Okay. You need that range to happen. While that range is consolidating, select altcoins are going to run. Those that have been strong, you want to focus on those, and um, let Bitcoin play out. Okay, so again, there's a strong possibility we go to 100K, which is now an SR point, and still reject from it. Okay, previously support back here, we held the support, we lost it, which would be a supply zone, SR point, possible downtrend retest as well. That is a very crucial level. Our next level will be around 106K and then this weekly supply zone. All right, so you can take scalps in there. You can take, your weekly swing trade there as well. But if Bitcoin is to bounce, it would be to build up some type of accumulation from here and then run up. All right, this would be a good demand zone to set bids at just in case we get it. But that is what I'm currently looking at for Bitcoin. All right. I think we have NVIDIA earnings this week. So keep your eyes out on that as well. All right. Now, this is the chart that I had put out in my previous video, I think, or shared with my class. Not sure. Anyways, the fourth wave didn't hold. Okay. So the wave count's invalid. The following wedge didn't hold as well. The previous range, we had the breakout and we retested an SR point slash supply and we rejected, came back down. Remember what I said about ranges? Here was a previous range. Here's a range low. Here's the range high. Okay. Came back down, rejected from the range highs again. That was actually a short to take back down to the range lows, continue to break down and go further up. Now, on a higher time frame, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I am macro bearish until this level is flipped, and I'm not going to change that. That level is not going to change daily. That is a high time frame level on the weekly. Until we get above this level and flip it, macro bearish. All right. I don't even know if we'll see that level. Let's focus on the current range that we are in. Here was your range low. And here is your range high. That is your range. 94.5 to 96. This is a 4-hour range. All right. If Bitcoin is to hold, we come back down to this order block. Stops below the wick. And no, this is not a trade I'm taking. I'm just giving you potential ideas. This would be the hold. Stops below the swing failure. test the order block, and then run. Okay. I gave you the daily setup. I gave you the weekly setup. But if we also turn on RSI here, you actually have a bullish div on the 4-hour. So if it does come back down for another test here, that is a potential area to buy. Okay. So you have a 4-hour div there. So if it does come back down, that is an area to buy. Again, your counter trend trading here. So your longs should be with a smaller than normal position size, and your shorts should be regular position sizing. Okay, let's take a look at ETH. So ETH on the daily actually had a swing failure pattern. Now, I said this to one of my students today. SFPs don't mean shit if you are counter trend trading, because we can go back to Bitcoin here. All right, where is it? This blue line here. We swept the lows, we closed back above, but look what happened that same day. Right? There was a clear SFP there. SFPs work best used as confluence. You shouldn't be trading this by itself. All right? Market structure over anything. Market structure has clearly been a downtrend, and you don't want to deviate away from it. I don't care if you think you're going to get a bounce, right? You can play your setup if you want, but the clear favorites of the market are shorts. So you're gonna swing trade shorts and scalp longs if anything. You're not gonna swing longs when the market isn't telling you to, be heavily sized up in longs. Now there will be outliers, other coins that are performing well, and every single dip should be, bought up. But Bitcoin and the rest of the market isn't one of those. I can give you an example as we get further on, but with ETH, you just had an SFP, right? There's your closer. There's your close. If you were watching this, you would have opened longs as soon as that daily closed and placed your stops below the wick. Let's break it down to a 4-hour. This could potentially be a double bottom. You don't have I wouldn't really call this here. Let's do this. You have a 8-hour div, okay? And honestly, if we are to run, this would be the area to do so. But again, looking based on this 8-hour, we need a close above here for a market structure break. This is clearly a downtrend. Here you have, here's your range high, here's your lows, and you have clear resistance right there around 3,300. So if price goes there, I expect a rejection. Here is a potential area for rejection as well. Now there's more confluence there. You have an SR point. You probably have fibs. 786 lines up. Actually golden pocket as well. Let's get rid of this bullshit. You shouldn't use RSI as a sole indicator. It's garbage. So something like that does make sense. But until we get a close above 3606, there is no structure break on ETH, and shorts are in favor. All right. Now, again, we can go lower and lower. If ETH is to hold, this isn't a strong order block whatsoever. If price comes back down, you want the move away from the order block to be a good amount. Like even this one right here, when we had that move up, we came back down and barely touched it and ran, right? But this isn't a strong order block in any sense of the word. But if this does hold, that would be the only current place if you're trying to scalp this godforsaken. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, so I'm not gonna say godforsaken, but in this shithole of a market, right? That would be the setup. Am I taking this? Absolutely not. But that's your 4-hour setup. There's your range play. Stops below the lows. Short if we get there. Okay. Now this would go much lower because you would see a rejection. But if you want to long confidently, you think market's gonna go higher, then you best wait until a market structure break. And what has to happen is, let's say this doesn't come. Let's say we just keep grinding, right? Comes back down. That short plays out, whatever, and then you close above here on the 4 hour in the 8 hour, and then this goes down. Then now you have a bullish Quasimodo. You have an inverse head and shoulders pattern, and then a break of structure as well. Then you could safely long to the next resistance levels. All right, that is when you safely long a an ETH swing, not a scalp, but a swing. Now, I still think that we go to this demand zone here. I still think that people were fucking crazy when I was calling for $3,500 ETH when we were at 4,400. We got it. We got lower, but 3,500 gave a bounce back to 4K. There's 35 back to 4,200 and then back down. Now I'm calling for 2,900. The reason for that is because I'm front running this demand zone. Very, very obvious level, right? Demand zones usually get tested. It could take a while, but they usually do get tested. I'm front running it, hoping similar to what Bitcoin had. If you take a look at this, okay, we touched that demand zone already, clean demand zone touch, but 2,900 is that support level. Similar to Bitcoin, I think it was on here, right here, right? There is your date, like we touched it, and then here's your support. And then perfectly touched, right? That's what I'm looking for on ETH. Front run this demand zone and then hopefully run from there. Now ETH looks good. Like I said, the SFP played out, and I expect to rally to around 3,300 if we are to get a decent size in the market or move up in the market. Sol, I posted a tweet saying that there were bear flags everywhere. This bear flag played out to a T almost. Sol mentioned this in my last video that I think this is one of the most bearish majors. It looks absolutely weak. Okay. I think this goes down to anywhere between 120 down to 100, possibly sub, but this was the area that I'm looking at. Okay, this order block hasn't been tested. Now, if it starts building a base like this, just like Bitcoin, and starts consolidating, then yes, you could have a move up. All right. But just like Bitcoin, there are heavy resistance areas and SR points to touch. Here is a straight up supply zone. And then this is a stronger supply zone. The consolidation is longer and the range is much more cleaner. So if we get a touch back at that SR point, this one would be a short worth taking personally. Swing trade back down to sub 100. Okay. Above 167 on the daily, close above, which will also be a breakout, then you have a structure break, and then you could talk about it looking some type of bullish on the daily, but again, on a higher time frame, this is absolutely bearish. Okay, this is one of the coins that I'm not even interested in touching currently. Too bearish, especially all the soul. This market is just saturated with soul shitters. So, fortunately, Solana is a negative beneficiary of that, and this isn't one that I'm interested in touching anytime soon. If anything, shorts are the better option for this. Let's take a look at Zcash private Bitcoin. So in my last video, this is the setup that I gave. I actually haven't touched it. If you go back and watch the video, the levels bounce perfectly from here. It was actually this. When I made the video last, we were here. I said above this red line here, then the market will run. It was on the 1 hour chart at that point because everything was going up. But looking at this now, I had shorted there. I actually longed this demand zone, and I closed at 680. But let's fast forward this. So we got our ABC correction. Here's the first, here's the two, here's the three. I was expecting 680 to, 700. We wicked a little bit high. And I said we would get a minor correction. I was hoping for that minor correction to come into this demand zone here. It didn't. And the longer it stalls, the weaker it's going to be. I actually don't want it to come back down here. That's not something that I would be longing anytime soon. But if you take a look at it, like I was expecting this to come back down here and do a inverse head and shoulders with targets of 1K from there. But the fact that it's taking longer here tells me that, I mean, especially with these wicks here, okay, this was the first bearish engulfing candle, followed up by a tweezer candle. This tells me that we're most likely to go a little bit lower. And if you take a look at the Bitcoin correlation, Zcash is inversely correlated to Bitcoin. So as Bitcoin has been going up, this has been going down. I am personally short after I saw this candle open. So I actually did ECA. Most likely will close because I don't like to have positions going open into Monday. I'd rather have Monday's range form. But taking a look at this on a lower time frame here, this is a clear range that we are in. I mean, you can take a look at this on a higher time frame as well, but here's your highs. Okay, here is your lows, and here is your mid-range. So as price came back down to the mid-range, we're holding it. We're getting close to mid-range again. This is where you don't want to open trades. You want to open trades at mid-range when you are at range highs, not when you're consolidating near mid-range. This probably goes back down to the range lows. A wick into this was a 4-hour order block when I first drew it. Could be a good possible long opportunity, but I think this comes back down to this SR point, maybe a little front ran, but maybe back to around like 540, and then this runs. Now again, you can go and take a look at this on a lower time frame. This lost trend, lost the trend. There's your back test, right? Once you had the back test and rejected, this would have been your setup. You decide if you want to open it. You can also say, hey, this kind of looks like, again, this is why TA is subjective, an ascending triangle. You have, there's your ascending triangle, you have clear resistance, multiple touches there, trend line, redrew it, just need 3 points for a trend line to be touched. If you want to have a safe long, you want this level to be flipped wherever the support is at that point, place your stop loss below it, and the technical targets of Zcash is going to be on the 1 hour around 8:30. Okay, so if you want to long, wait for that support to be, or that resistance to be flipped. Otherwise, you could potentially take a long in this demand zone here on the 4 hour, or sorry, the 4 hour order block, or the best long, if we can get it, will be around 540. This is a clear range on the higher time frame as well. The demand zone, whoops, the demand zone did its job and held, but here is a clean range. If we go back into the demand zone, another long there, but right now, this is a coin that has been, because of its volatility, a really good coin to trade, and it's currently inversely correlated to Bitcoin. All right. So with coins like this, these are the ones that you want to trade and not trade anything else. I know Bitcoin, is has been volatile, but if you take a look at Zcash and you take a look at these wicks, you can make more money trading this volatility than you can Bitcoin. All right. So this would be one, you can break it down to different time frames. This would be one that I personally would trade or scalp until I've milked it or until it's gotten weak before I move into something else. Just stick with one coin, milk it, and then move on. All right. The last coin that I want to talk about is Hype. Okay. Like I said, bear flags were everywhere. Okay. Break down, back test, and then continue down. Now, this one's interesting because on the 29th, it has the unlock, right? So they could continue to push the price a little bit higher. I don't see it going back to, one sec, let's switch this to a perp chart. Okay. I can see this going back to, at max. Here is your resistance, and here is your demand. Okay. These are the only two areas where you want to currently trade. Now, just like the bear flag that played out here, you potentially have one playing out here. Okay. So if that breaks just like it did there, you could wait for the retest, and the technical targets, depending on how high you want to take it, multiple, you can take it from here to there, from here to there, would be around $33. All right. These lows look like they want to be swept, but I don't know how this unlock is going to affect the price of this coin. They could push it up into this area here, assuming it takes 2 weeks, maybe a little bit higher, who knows, into a double top maybe. I doubt it gets that high. But in the event, you never say never, right? In the event we go there, that's a short as well. Back down. Usually unlocks prices climb, climb, climb. unlock happens, investors get their hype, and then they sell, right? So keep your eye out on that. Not really interested in trading this on leverage. I'm just this coin is interesting because over the next 2 weeks, I can see it going there, and I won't be making a video in the next 2 weeks that goes over the market. Maybe just one that goes over Bitcoin on a macro time scale. But going to be enjoying the holidays, and as you should too. But these are the only coins that are currently interesting. As you guys can see, when I was going over Zcash, the price was 688. Bitcoin went up 200 bucks. This came down $3. That's what I mean by inversely correlated. There's a lot of opportunity to make money in certain assets, and Zcash has definitely been one of those. Other coins, like Sui, which was very strong at one point, aren't as appetizing, aren't as interesting. Link has been very surprising. Link looks decent. Reclaim back on this demand zone here. And your setup, again, most of these coins don't mean shit unless Bitcoin looks decent. Okay? There's no structure break on Link until it closes above basically $16.66 on the 4 hour. Then you have a structure shift. Right now, everything is still a downtrend. So while the macro markets are bearish, yes, you could play, possible intraday or intra-hour scalps, and setups could look bullish on lower time frames, but don't lose sight of the bigger picture, and that is that Trump is a loser. Sorry, that the market is in a downtrend. All right, so keep that in mind. If you're playing the bounces, you want to take profit quickly. If you're playing on a macro time frame, then shorts are going to be the swings, not the longs. All right. There are a million different coins that look and have okay setups, but I'm not going to be going over it. This video is already 37 minutes long. Most of you only watch the first 10 minutes anyways, and the first 3 minutes of this was just me rambling. So I'll leave it at that. If I do make a Bitcoin video, it'll be out this week. Otherwise, I will catch you whenever I make a next video. Thanks, everyone.